welcome back to the Searchmetrics webinar on SEO Easily Explained. For those that joined us a couple of weeks back, welcome. This is essentially part 2. For those that are just joining for the first time today, don't stress. It doesn't really connect back in the sense of you need to see the last one to make this one to make sense. So you should be right in that sense. And yeah, today we're going to be talking very much around the KPIs to watch out for in 2019, 2020, whatever year realistically. At this point in time, it's going to be the same until Google puts the next algorithm update in realistically, isn't it? So yeah, today it's myself, Troy, and Martin here. So Martin, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Martin, the team lead over here for client success at Searchmetrics. And yeah, I've been around in the SEO industry since 2007. Cool.
Nice, nice. And yeah, my name's Troy. I'm one of the account executives here in Searchmetrics for the UK. I've been in marketing in some form or another for about 5 odd years, and then sort of also on the sales side of things too. So have a range of knowledge from a couple of different areas of marketing. So hopefully we can give you guys a little bit of insight today and excite you with a few new KPIs to look at.
Brilliant. So let's look at today's agenda. So we're going to talk about traffic.
Cool.
Revenue. Everyone,
the important one.
Yeah, everyone likes to talk about revenue. We're going to look a little bit into some content and some technical considerations.
Okay.
And then also some referrals, and we'll get into why that's not referring traffic, but it's a little bit more
different kind of referral.
Yeah, a little bit more SEO specific.
Yep. Nice. Nice.
So first, when we're talking about traffic, just to set the scene and give everyone a baseline to start from, understanding which traffic or what traffic counts as organic, so SEO traffic. So in a very simple way, we look at a user that now clicks on a link on Google and they land on a page. So in this case, our page number 1. And then perhaps they click on another page, another link on page number 1 and takes them to page number 2. So maybe they landed on a category page and then they found the product that they wanted and then they clicked to that product page. And then maybe they went even further to a specific type of product, or maybe a blue scarf, for example. And what this means is each one of these pages that they've gone to, it counts as a page view. And combined, this is what we call a session. So, when you're looking into Google Analytics or into Adobe, you'll see sessions.
Cool.
So, one user, one session. So, here's our session. But if this user, stays idle, maybe it's a tab that you have open, and
who doesn't have lots of tabs open,
and you've left it idle for 30 minutes or more, then that session ends. And then you come back to that tab, and then session number 2 would start, or your second session.
So sessions and traffic, would you look at those in the same way, or you'd look at those in sort of different metrics here?
It will be different because, like the example of that tab being open, seeing 2 sessions doesn't mean 2 different people have come to your page or to those pages. So, I would rather look at, unique views rather.
Yeah.
But we can talk a little bit more about, some of those specifics later on. So like we've said, the user clicks the link. And, there's different traffic sources. But when we're talking about SEO, we're talking about organic. So, over there in the middle, when, we're not talking about direct or social links and this sort of stuff, although all of those will still generate, a session.
For those playing along at home that may not know the difference, direct is basically if you type in www.searchmetrics.com versus organic is you just type Searchmetrics into Google, right? That would be the difference.
Yeah, but if you typed in search metrics into Google and you clicked on the organic results, so remember, there's another consideration which would be, paid traffic if there was a PPC ad running.
Of course.
That would be different. So this is highly important to understand the difference between all of these, so you can identify which is sort of SEO traffic, as we call it. So which KPIs are connected to traffic? So we've got our user clicks the link, has a page, lands on a page, and has a session. Now this is somewhat important. The duration of the session can also be important. We can think about stuff like how long they spent on the page, and then perhaps why. If there's only a little bit of content on the page, but they've spent a very long time, maybe they've just switched tabs. So, take it with a grain of salt type of thing, but it's certainly somewhat important. Yeah.
Reasonable. It's a good indication. I mean, for me, if I'm talking to someone, you're talking about session duration, tends to mean that someone's interested in staying on your page and they're engaging ultimately with your content and with what information you're putting out there. So it's got to be a good metric to some degree, right?
Yeah, or they're getting really lost and they can't find what they want. So.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you can always pessimistic, glass half full kind of guy.
But yeah, and then stuff like scroll depth. This is arguable. It's not really such an important KPI when it's connected to pure SEO, measurement and that sort of stuff. But I would still argue that I can make the case that looking at scroll depth would give me an indication of how relevant the content is on the page to where they've landed. So if they've landed on a page and you've got a page that's 4 screens worth where you have to scroll, and the person didn't scroll at all, either they found what they were looking for or not at all, and then they've gone back to where they came from.
So essentially, if someone doesn't scroll, they're either finding the information really quickly, which is ideal, or they've somehow come to a completely irrelevant wrong page.
Yeah, and we'll look a little bit more into that in a bit. So things like bounce rates also can be somewhat important. We're not going to go too far down the, the rabbit hole of Google using it as a ranking factor.
It's a common debate.
Strictly speaking, they're looking at a back to SERP rate. It's debatable.
Yeah.
But end of the day, high bounce rates is going to signify one thing or another, and then knowing how to find that and knowing what to do with that's really what the key is.
So if you do have a high bounce rate, it generally means your content's not displaying, like you're not giving the right content to people. Or do you put bounce rate? Do you blame that on Google because they're showing the end user the wrong thing?
No, it can be down to SEO. So it'll be SEO and your content. So the way that you've optimized the page and the content that you put on the page is not matching with the person that's searching, that's landing on the page.
Yeah.
And Google's evolved back in the day. They would just match things as you're typing. Now, with all these advancements, they really understand the meaning behind the search or the intent.
Yeah.
So if that's not really matching, it's not providing a good service for Google's users. And if they go down that route, then less and less people would use Google, and it'll really affect their revenue, their business model.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely a factor to consider, and something I would look at if a certain section of pages have really high bounce rates. I would look into why.
Yeah.
And there's a few different methods you can figure out why. So we got a user. It'll be you, Troy, this time. And you've never come to this page before, so you counted as a new user. You come back to the page a second time.
Yep.
You're returning or recurring user. This is important to understand the difference.
Yeah.
The difference between the two. So like we said, we're speaking about SEO KPIs, so organic is the most important consideration to just understand that we don't want to throw in paid or direct and that sort of stuff. So how do you measure this? So first, let's have a look at some ranking keywords. This is just something I pulled out from our platform, just for Amazon, just a few keywords, not all 15 million, something that Amazon UK ranked for. But just to understand, these are different keywords and these are the different pages that they're ranking for, and then these are the positions on Google that they're ranking for. So impressions versus traffic.
This is a common confusion. I deal with this one on a regular basis.
Yeah, so impressions, this is what I was alluding to in terms of linking your bounce rate and everything else, and investigating further. So definitely Google Search Console is your friend over there. It used to be called Google Webmaster Tools. I renamed it a couple of years ago. And this is going to show you impressions. So it's going to show you all the times that you've shown up in search, not necessarily if someone has clicked, which is super useful in a variety of ways. So it can show you new ways that people are searching. Yeah, it can show you other opportunities. This needs to be combined with the clicks when we're figuring out when we're trying to calculate like an expected amount of traffic based on your ranking position, but also so-called impressions. Yeah. So, you can think of impressions also almost as like search volume, like we see in our platform. Okay. As well. So the more searches per month, the more impressions. So the more times, people would see
looking for it. Yeah. I mean, that's got more impressions. At the very least, got to be good for some sort of brand recognition.
Yeah, for sure. And that's super relevant for organic traffic, which is very much what we're focusing on over here. So page impressions are page views. So every time someone views the page, that's an impression. If you go and view page 1, 2, and then 3, and then you go back to page number 2, that's another impression. Yeah. Okay. So looking at that number and thinking, oh, that's the total number of people that have seen my page, you need to understand the difference that you've seen the page twice. Yeah. So. Do we have some questions?
Yes, it looks like we do have a couple of questions here.
So what are the methods to find out why users are bouncing off your website?
So, I mean, I think you're probably better off on answering this one. I mean, it's a long-winded question, I think.
Yeah, that is quite a long one. I mean, certainly I would start with gathering all the pages that have the highest bounce rate. Yeah. So looking at something like Google Analytics, if that's what you're running, which most people are, I'd gather all the pages with the highest bounce rate. I'd then go into Google Search Console to link those pages with those impressions. And it's also going to give us those keywords. Yeah. I'm then going to look at trying to figure out what sort of signals or intent these keywords have. And by doing that, I could match if the content is matching, that keyword. Intent, yeah, and you can do that manually. You can just think, well, okay, when people search for laptop comparison, and if I'm landing them on my page that just has one laptop, clearly that doesn't match their intent because they've used the word comparison. So they're looking for a comparison. They're looking for a top 10. They don't even know what size laptop they want. They don't even know if they want Windows or Mac. Yeah. So that's what I mean by matching the intent. Don't think we have overly too much time to go more in depth. I'm happy to have a conversation with you offline, Catherine, to delve a little bit deeper into methods.
And then
second question.
One more. How do you find out back to SERP rate? Is it on Google Analytics?
No, so this one's more tricky because Google Analytics doesn't directly tell you, but what you can do is you could try look at session duration and look at bounces.
Yeah.
And then,
I mean, realistically, it's not a measurement that Google is giving anyone visibility into.
No, not directly.
Yeah.
And it's also worth saying that it's just a small part of the algorithm.
Yeah.
Something like rank brain, which is out of scope for for this presentation, but it's a signal.
Yeah.
As we call it. So yeah. Let's jump on. Otherwise, we're not going to get to the end. So think about how likely we are to receive traffic from these, impressions.
Yeah.
What we're talking about earlier, which is every time your page shows in Google search results, not necessarily when someone clicks on it. So to do that, we're going to look at click-through rate.
Yeah.
So in a very simple concept is we expect a certain amount of percentage based on where a page is ranking, organically on Google. This will vary by market. It'll vary by depending on what else is there, feature snippets and paid ads and maps and all sorts of other sub features, as we call it. But yeah, basically ratio, the ratio of impressions to clicks. Just showed you, explained to you how, to calculate it. Another important, and certainly for us, important metric, KPI, is visibility. And so this is an index to measure, performance or expected performance, over a dedicated keyword set. So say you're selling all those laptops.
Yeah.
Keep with the laptops example. How visible are you in the market?
Yeah. Okay.
And this is, highly important. So number of ranking keywords, somewhat important because, I could have also a laptops website and I'd be competing with you and you could be ranking for 500 keywords and I'm ranking for 2,000. But if you're ranking higher for the higher volume ones or the more relevant ones,
yeah,
you're going to beat me probably.
Yeah.
Just on that concept, not when the user gets to the page and sees my prices versus yours.
I was going to say, unfortunately, user intent. Never measure that one.
Yeah, and there's that's just the top of your overall your overall funnel. So, and like I said, position spread as well is super important. So if you were ranking really highly for more important keywords, it's going to be more important than just the raw number.
Yeah.
So our traffic index is, an estimate that, we provide on our platform, which is basically looking at what I explained in the previous slide, the click-through rate and the search volume, and then an expected percentage.
Yeah.
So let's say it was hypothetically 30% for position number 1, and the search volume was 1,000 a month. Simple math.
Yeah.
And that's just a rough, not a rough estimate, but a pretty good.
It's a good guide.
A pretty good guide. That's quite important.
So
I'm hand it over to you.
Yeah, revenue. I mean, my favorite one to talk about personally, and I think this is something that a lot of people try and do. A lot of people try and measure their return on investment, but I think it's something that a lot of people really struggle to do. When you're starting to talk about a return on investment for SEO, it's very much a performance measure used to evaluate the efficiency of an investment. So basically, you need to look at the return that you're getting from your spend. So if you spend £100 and you make £100, it's not a great return on investment. If you spend £100 and you make £1,000, that's a 10 times return on investment.
Sign me up. Sign me up.
Yeah, anyone wants that. So that's what we're aiming to sort of help you guys get a good idea of. And ultimately in SEO, and this is how I talk with a lot of our clients, is we talk about, okay, you've got to look at all of your expenses, not just the expenses for tools or your staffing, but all of the expenses overall, and then ultimately the overall returns. And now you've got to look at this from the ultimate returns of organic traffic. So this can sometimes be, for some people, it's difficult to break out organic from paid or direct and all that sort of stuff, which can start to cause some areas of contention, but overall, we're looking at those organic rankings, or sorry, organic revenue. So the expenses that we want to start to consider. Obviously, you've got to consider your personnel. So this is something that some people look at as a sunk cost. It's something, okay, you're paying the personnel anyway, but I think realistically, when you're properly working out that return on investment, you do need to calculate your SEO manager, your content creator. I mean, some people go down to the point of doing a return on investment for each piece of content they do. So therefore, you need to be thinking, yeah, trust me, I thought it was a little bit extreme too, but they only made a couple of pieces of content a month. So wasn't as bad, but it's you've got to then go, okay, how much time has been put into research for this piece of content? How much time has been put in writing the piece of content? And then how much time has been put in optimizing that piece of content? So it can be a massive one sometimes. The next side of things is development. And this is, development you can look at as terms of like your overall website development. You can look at it in terms of if you need any sort of developers to change page structures or anything along those lines. You've got to think about all that sort of stuff. And then also just, as it says, IT infrastructure. So, I mean, for me, that includes platform costs and all that sort of stuff, but also hosting and anything along those lines. Do you have anything else that you'd sort of put in that development side of things, Marten?
Well, it's such a wide range of things. I mean, it really depends on the infrastructure of the website and what needs to happen or change.
Yeah,
it could even be designed to a degree if it's more the technical type of
issues.
Moving the whole thing to JavaScript or something, something crazy.
And then the last one you've got to always think about is obviously if you've got any external services, agencies, consultants. Again, some people put platforms in there into that category rather than the development category. So it just depends on how you're calculating it all. But I mean, ultimately, it all adds up. It's all your cost of SEO. And then you've got to think about obviously what are you earning? What are you making out of that? So, I mean, this is I think the important point, that it's only organic traffic. So you need to be setting up organic conversions. You need to be tracking those very carefully to make sure you know exactly where it's coming from. And lead attribution can be a big thing, and I think we'll touch on that a little bit more in a moment or so as well. So,
yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. It's going to really lead us down the path of talking about attribution. And in my experience, attribution and attribution models is a very contentious topic, and certainly also a very important topic. And at the end of the day, if you know enough about attribution, you're going to have to make a decision on if you're going to split it up, if you're going to just make it the final source, and depending on the organization and the business, is where it gets contentious, because if you have a paid team and an SEO team and a paid social team, they're all working towards their KPIs. And if you just say, well, okay, I'm only going to count the last source of traffic that drove a conversion into their bucket, then the SEO team will be like, well, but they saw the page through us first. So,
I mean, sometimes you need to look at the assists.
But it's a little bit out of scope for this to go down.
We digress. But I mean, the next thing when you're looking at earnings or return on investment, sometimes it's difficult to put an exact direct cost on it. So you've got to think about, okay, how likely is my content to create a conversion sales? And then what is the end purchase of that conversion? So, I mean, sometimes it might be your conversions are a lead or something along those lines. And then that's going to we calculate a lead is worth X amount to us. So sometimes you've got to go with, you can't attribute everything exactly. And you've got to go, okay, on average, it's worth £100 to us. So you've got to think about those things as well. And I think we'll touch on that a little bit more. In the next.
Yeah, because I mean, a great example would be like if you're a charity trying to gain awareness on a topic or on a problem.
Yeah.
Versus if you're selling those laptops like we were talking about.
Makes a bit of a difference.
Yeah, and certainly in terms of, figuring out how much that's worth.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's more just exposure that we're looking for.
Yeah. So, I mean, when we're looking at things like conversion rates and that sort of stuff, we're thinking about, okay, the user themselves, they're obviously clicking through. Then ultimately what we're looking at when we're thinking about the conversion is this end bit here. It's the purchase, the lead, the contact us. It might be, I mean, if we're talking charities, happen to be recently chatting with a charity. So they're actually looking at, okay, how much information are they getting out there to people? So even for them, a conversion doesn't necessarily have a value on it, but it is obviously an important part of their charitable work. So they don't attribute a value to it, but they just do basically a view count on that. Yeah,
this is where I would definitely look at, integrating more engagement type of metrics on these pages, and then scroll depth would become more important. I would say, because are they reading all the information, that's just presented on the page?
And then, I mean, ultimately, conversions are acquisitions which are done through the website. As it says here, they can be purchases, leads, contacts, ad clicks, and that's ad clicks from banner ads and that sort of stuff. So if you're generating revenue through your ads placements on your website, that's why you look at ad clicks there. It's obviously not looking at it in the SERP features of SERP results.
Yeah, I think this part is more, just clearly defining what a conversion is. And that can come from a variety of different sources.
And then, I mean, the conversion rate, when we're looking at it, it's very much about how likely is that user to perform an action that you consider to be conversion, acquisition, worthwhile, basically, a worthwhile action on your site. And then, I mean, ultimately, as SEOs, the goal is to optimize that conversion rate by whether that's changing content, optimizing for different keywords, looking at user search intent and that sort of stuff as well there. So
yeah, there's quite a lot of methods and tactics.
I feel like we could do a whole webinar on this alone, actually, really.
I've certainly done some training sessions in the past that can span hours. So yeah, let's not dive too much into that, but let's look a little bit into some content, some, as SEOs would call it, on-page optimization.
Yeah.
So, we're not going to cover every single element and that sort of stuff because it's a little bit out of scope, but the basics, which are important that you should be looking at, certainly are your page titles. And if you have any duplicates. So I've just used here Amazon as an example, and you can see in the source code there is their page title. And that's for their homepage. This is important because it's going to change what users see on Google when they search. So you got that little clickable blue link that's underlined. There's your page title, and then underneath that your description, which we'll get to in a moment. But we don't want to duplicate these titles because it's going to confuse search engines. It's going to confuse
and users. I mean, if everyone just sees, okay, the title is Amazon.com or Amazon.co.uk, it's going to be kind of confusing.
Yeah, and you're kind of missing a trick.
Yeah.
Somewhere where you could optimize to make something better.
Yeah.
which is what optimize means. So over here, just two example titles, just being the same. And this shouldn't happen.
Big no-no.
Big no-no. And as I alluded to just before, our meta descriptions as well. So over there, again, this is Amazon. Somewhat important. We don't want to duplicate them either.
Yeah.
But it's worth also noting, I didn't note it on that slide, but it's worth noting that that can also affect if people are going to click or not.
Well, I mean, if you think about the way that you naturally search and naturally look at things, I know that maybe about 50% of the time I read the meta description because I want to know what is the person that's built this page want me to know. And if I can get that in that first line or two, and it's what I'm looking for, then I'm going to click on that page and most likely read through, and that's about effective optimization.
Yeah, I mean, you can also write them in such a way that someone starts reading a sentence and then they want to continue reading that sentence, so then they click through it.
Yeah.
It works really well in like news articles and that sort of stuff.
It's like clickbait, but for SEO.
It's a very old tactic. They've been doing it even with newspapers for many, many, many years, making you turn the page, making you want to read more. And that's the art of writing headlines as well. But yeah.
Again, we digress.
So let's also look at just a couple technical considerations. So site speed, page speed, ranking factor. Yes,
I think so. I think there's some fairly conclusive evidence out there that it is a ranking factor.
Yeah, and Google has confirmed as well. I was just trying to trick you there. What sort of possible KPIs are there in the area of site speed? So we've got time to first byte. So how long does it take the server to initially respond? We have the time to interactive, which is also known as time to first paint.
Yeah.
So that's when how long it takes for a web page to load enough that you can interact with it. That it's not just a white page, because that can be very important for certain web pages which have a lot of elements that are going to load. Think like video box in the corner and all this sort of stuff. So there is there is a difference, and then a difference, but with overloading time, that's how long a web page needs to fully load.
Yep. So that's JavaScript, that's videos, images, the whole 9 yards.
Your tracking scripts, your everything.
Yeah.
And those things make a difference. So are 4 of 4 errors worth a worthy KPI to report on? So just before we talk about that, we'll just explain what a 404 is and how it happens. So, if a URL is requested, so basically I've gone onto Google, I've typed something, I found a link or a result, I clicked the link, then my web browser is now making a request. But if the server can't find the page, then we're going to get an error message if it's been built in. Sometimes you won't even get a page not found type of thing, but you will see 404 page not found.
Yeah.
Reducing this number is of course important in the sense that it's a better experience for your visitors or for your users. But it's not an overall performance of your SEO. It's not an overall indicator of your SEO performance.
Yeah.
So something to keep in mind.
It's a good to look at, but it's not really a great KPI to report on, basically.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it the KPI.
Yeah.
I would site speed.
Yeah. And just quickly before we go further, where would you get those site speed metrics from?
So, Google has their own tool you can go and test.
Yeah. That's Lighthouse, right?
Yes, but the problem is to do bulk tests for an entire website, a little bit more tricky. But they do offer an API. I don't want to name any tools out there.
Yeah.
But it's if you just want to check a few pages, certainly
Google Lighthouse.
Certainly Lighthouse can help you.
Yeah. Cool.
There. I encourage anyone out there who doesn't know too much about the technical sides of things to not overly panic just yet about the page speed and that sort of stuff. You can go and check, but I would much rather make a few checks, not panic, and then speak to my developer and say, could you have a deeper look into this, or speak to a technical SEO,
Yep.
and then gauge how important this really is.
Yep.
And then also they're going to be able to tell you how feasible it is to change, because it's all good and well, you go and check, and then there's a need that you're going to have to overhaul the entire website.
Yeah.
And that stuff's not cheap.
But okay, so we have an epically long question here. It's actually it's based on our previous section when we were talking about sort of duplicate titles and that sort of stuff. Basically, the long and the short of it is what happens when you have duplicate titles for different countries, offering the same product, same organization, but it's globally. I mean, I think this is something that I see very frequently. Is a lot of people have internationalization issues.
Mm-hmm. So the short answer is that there's ways that you can tell Google that a page is meant for a certain market. So when I mean market, I mean certain country,
yeah,
and a certain language.
Yeah,
and this is called hreflang, right? And quite simply, you can say this page is meant for, I don't know, let's say Switzerland.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to, but you can also define the language. You can say this is now meant for Switzerland and for Swiss.
Yeah.
Or for German, or maybe if you're in the South, Italian,
French, yeah, whichever area you're in.
Yeah, that's the simple answer. But hreflang does get it's probably like the hardest part of SEO, because it seems easy and it gets very complicated very quickly.
Yeah, it's something, I mean, I deal with like multinational companies that have this issue very, very frequently. It's probably one of the first things that I tend to look at when I'm talking to someone about issues and errors that they might have. So, I mean, from a KPI perspective and reporting on it, it's probably a good thing to be looking at. If you've got major errors, you might look at it as making it a KPI for a period of time to try and reduce those. But I think it's probably not going to be a KPI that you could report on all that often, would you, Marten?
No, I mean, I would be monitoring if, say, Google Switzerland is showing pages from my UK website.
Yeah.
Then for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
But once it's set up correctly,
yeah,
it should be fine. Should be smooth sailing.
Yeah.
You can start looking at, and this is where it becomes a little bit more debatable. You can start looking at locations, like all the geo stuff, in something like Google Analytics. But with the rise of VPN usage, I wouldn't take it as a hard and fast KPI. It can be an indicator.
Yeah. If
I'm seeing a vast majority of my traffic to my Swiss pages coming from the UK, and I don't want that to be happening, then certainly
got some issues there. So
yeah, but I mean, end of the day, you're going to need someone with enough technical SEO know-how to really define it and set it up correctly. Yeah, but it can certainly be done.
Well, hopefully that answers your question there. There is a second open most.
So yeah, just to build on that, because I'm just rereading the question. So you could have, and it is allowed to have tons of duplicated titles across these different countries. Yeah, basically, because then Google understands, okay, this page is intended for Swiss-speaking Switzerland, and Swiss-speaking people, subsequently Spanish or whatever. So then it's not a problem. Cool.
Let's keep going on here, guys. So,
yeah, this is when we spoke about referrals in our agenda. So it's going to be more, sorry, just to jump back. It's going to be more us talking about PageRank backlinks and a bit of domain popularity. So first, just a quick history lesson. We're not going to go into too much depth with this. So, basically, Larry and Sergey met, in university, and one of their main projects was created a search engine.
Fun fact, they're stepping down. Anyway, continue.
And this original algorithm that they came up with, which I wanted to put on the slide, a little bit too complicated. They're called PageRank, and they got a patent for it in '97.
Yeah,
they created it before that, but yeah, and this used to be the most important sort of ranking factor, the most important consideration. Say 10 odd years ago, people would really look at what's the PageRank number, and the higher the better, and it was out of 10.
Yeah,
and I think the only website that I ever saw that had 10 was actually Google.
Yeah.
And we used to have a toolbar and we used to show you the number, but this was years ago, and this stuff is not even even updated anymore. So yeah, just going back to this algorithm, it basically evaluated websites by analyzing its connections or its links, its backlinks as we know it today. That's coming to this website from other pages. In its simplest form, it was very much just looking. It was just a numbers game.
Yeah,
it was
the backlinks game.
Yeah, well, a number of backlinks.
Yeah,
it was just more is better, and there wasn't any, differentiation on quality.
Yeah,
and if you got a system that easy to manipulate and there's money to be made, someone's going to come along, and
many someones.
But Google has evolved, and from 2012 onwards, with all these cute black and white animal updates or algorithms, your penguins, your pandas, your hummingbirds, even
is hummingbird black and white?
No, okay, not hummingbird, but certainly penguins and pandas, and there was also a farmer update, but certainly, yeah, hummingbird was nice and colourful. If you're not colorblind, and this really changed the way that Google understands the links, content, and also and search intent. So, and that hummingbird was the pioneering change. In that shift from just matching 3 keywords, like buy silver laptop, to top laptop 2019, and understanding what's the actual intent.
Yeah.
And then that did evolve onto stuff like RankBrain, but this is more just a history lesson than an in-depth discussion. And like I said, that KPI, PageRank, since 2016, it's not even visible to outsiders. And what we mean by outsiders is anyone outside of Google.
Yeah.
So backlinks, are they still relevant?
That's a debate and a half.
Yeah, that's another 2-hour presentation. But from a top level, which sort of KPIs are there in the area of backlinks? So we got your website, we got a bunch of other websites, and some of them are linking to yours or to a page on your website.
Yep.
Some of them have more than one link. And you're gonna try to figure out the link popularity. So this is kind of what PageRank was trying to do certainly in the early days, looking at if you had thousands of other pages linking to one page, then clearly that page is important.
Yeah,
this was the concept of the original, what they created in a simplified,
very simplified
manner. And basically, what we're trying to say is, it's not that important.
Relevant,
as a KPI these days, I wouldn't say it's irrelevant. It's just the importance has dropped since it used to be the most important thing in 10, 12 years ago type of thing. The market's really changed. Understanding the relevance of backlinks, now it gets a bit more important.
Yeah. So the number of domains, essentially the number of other websites, rather than, so you could have 100 backlinks from one other website and it's still only sort of looking at one.
Yeah, but I mean, what I mean by relevance as well is what kind of website is really linking to yours. Is it relevant, or is it just complete nonsense?
Yeah.
So, it's very much a quality over quantity scenario that we have these days.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it's still, a ranking factor, but it's become a lot less important. And it's also become more complicated to analyze and report on, which is quite nice if it's becoming less important and more complicated, because
usually means it's getting better.
It makes our life easier as well. And, like I was alluding to over there, quality of the referring domains and how thematically related they are plays a bigger role than just the overall number.
Yeah.
And another contentious, debatable point is around having a natural link profile. So all those links to those websites pointing to yours, was that created naturally, or does it look artificial?
Yeah.
Why I say it's contentious is because what does natural look like? You can't really. I know what not natural looks like.
Yeah.
But
what does natural really look like?
There's a lot of variance in that.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this case, it's more very much about building up natural backlinks rather than just going and paying someone to give you 100 backlinks.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, that's very easy to spot.
Yeah.
You're always going to have the outliers in something like this,
Yeah.
So key learnings for today, so that we might still have time for one or two more questions. So, traffic, organic traffic, probably the most, we would say the most important measurement of, is SEO doing well?
Yeah.
I mean, we still have to convert that traffic, but that's why we're looking at rankings, but we're looking at visibility as well. So, I really encourage people to, I wouldn't say move away from looking at just individual keyword rankings, but understanding rather groupings of them.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's a bane of my existence when I'm talking to people where they're like, "Oh yes, we're in position 4." Like, well, what does that mean? How is that relevant?
Yeah, I mean, if you say we're in position 4 and this is now driving an increase in organic traffic of X%, which is then based on our conversion rate on the page or on the site equaling this amount of money.
Yeah, that's relevant.
Yeah, that's a way different
scenario.
It's a way different scenario. Yeah. So looking at conversion rate analysis, or CRO, if you'd like, conversion rate optimization, and SEO optimization. SEO can be very economically viable when you're getting to, I wouldn't say it's free traffic, but as you spoke about, there were some costs involved, but it's very much it's a longer term investment.
Yeah,
that pays, especially once you get it right.
It's like renting a house versus buying a house.
Yeah.
Takes a while to buy the house, but once you got it, you got it. Whereas renting a house, you stop paying, it's gone.
Or you're gone.
Yeah, that too.
And, we did speak about some criteria for on-page considerations, duplicate titles, meta descriptions, certainly something you should take care of. Site speed.
Yeah.
Super, super important. And, this is not just for affecting your rankings. This is very much, improving the experience that your visitors are having.
Yeah.
If I go to a web page and it's really, really slow and it's not loading, I'm probably going back to find something else.
I know I'm going back.
Yeah, it's
been done on more than one occasion.
Yeah, and depending on the device, depending on if I'm on the Wi-Fi over here, or if I'm, in another country and I'm on 3G because that's all they have. Like, you got to take all these things into consideration. And finally, our key learning is very much, around the backlinks. That they have some importance, but I definitely, if there's one thing you take away from this, it's quality over quantity.
Yeah.
And highly recommended to have a natural link profile. But if you're worried that you don't, there are routes that you can go down. Get the help from someone who knows a bit more about SEO.
Yeah.
And there's processes that you can do, such as link disavows.
Cool.
But maybe we have a part 3, and we go a little bit more into depth.
I'm sure we could go into depth about a lot more of these things, but hopefully that's been a really good sort of overview for you all, guys. Really appreciate you stopping by and enjoying the conversation between Marten and I. So, I mean, realistically, if anyone's got any questions, feel free to fire them away now. We do have another couple of minutes that we can have a bit of a chat about anything KPI or simple SEO related. Otherwise, you can also take a look, as you can see on the page there. You can see we've got some Google shopping studies that we've just, actually that's, I think the 2019 studies only just been released. So we have a bit of an insight into that. And then online reputation management, that's always that's actually a really interesting read. Even I find that one interesting. So it's definitely worth your time there, guys. So yeah, do we have any questions or queries at the moment? Here we go. Oh, just want to say thank you. That's an excellent question.
Yeah, you're welcome, Janine.
And yeah, obviously, if you guys do have any more questions or queries for Marten and I, feel free to find either of us on LinkedIn, and we can more than happy to sort of help you out where we can.
Yeah, sure.
And doesn't look like there's anyone else. We'll just give it another moment or two, and if nothing comes through, I know typing a question can take a while. I mean, particularly if they're epically long ones, or you're just trying to think about the right way to say things. But in the meantime, what do you think? What can we discuss in a 2-minute window?
Well, I mean, I'd like to know the feedback on what we should put in part 3. Should there be a part 3?
Yeah, I think actually, if they do have any feedback, there is a at the end of when you leave, there'll be a survey, so feel free to put any information in there or pop something in the question box here and now. But it doesn't look like anyone's got questions. Last week we had an abundance of them, or the other one we had an abundance of them. So obviously this time we did a better job of explaining ourselves and made it simpler.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I told you I'm a positive guy. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining here today. I hope it's been insightful for you, taken away a couple of metrics to sort of take a look at when you're looking at everything there. And yeah, if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out. Awesome.
Well,
we've got a suggestion for content for part 3.
Part 3 content.
I think we're planning a content webinar early in the new year, so we will keep you posted, Helen. Awesome.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
For making the time.
And we will talk to you on the flip side. Got to roll with it.